If you felt like the starter home market just basically disappeared, you're not imagining it. The first time home buyer market, which is the largest segment of the housing market, has basically been pushed to the sidelines. And when that happens, it doesn't just affect that one group, it affects everything from pricing, inventory, timing, and leverage, whether you're buying your first home or selling one or planning your next move. Nationally, the first time homebuyer market made up only 24% of all the homes sold last year. That is the lowest it's been in 40 years. And on top of that, the average age of the first time homebuyer is 40 years old. That's up from 32 years old prior to the pandemic. So today I'm going to show you who those buyers are, how they got priced out of the market, and why 2026 might finally bring them back into the market. We're going to use Tampa Bay data and real world trends that don't always show up in the headlines. And we'll start with the one thing that people are misreading right now, and that is price. When people hear that prices are down, they immediately think that sellers are panicking and slashing prices. But that's not what's happening right now. In November in Tampa Bay, let's look at Pinellas County. Year over year, the average sales price was down 7%, and in Hillsborough County, it was down 11%. Those numbers might sound dramatic, but it's not because sellers are slashing prices. If we look at the list price to sales price ratio for November, it was 96%, which is exactly what it was November last year. So if sellers aren't taking major discounts on their prices, why is the average sales price actually going lower? It's because there's a different type of inventory available. Lower priced homes are actually coming on the market, providing options for buyers. Last month in Pinellas County, the median sales price was $440,000. That's down significantly from the spring and summer highs where it was $479,000. In November, there were 726 homes that sold. Half of those sold at or below $440,000. That tells us something very important. Buyers are shifting towards affordability, not necessarily because they want to, but because they have to. And this is where first-time home buyers re-enter the conversation. First-time buyers still want to buy, they just haven't been able to until now when more affordable options have re-entered the market. That's why this is a shift, not a collapse. Lower priced homes are making up a larger portion of what's actually selling, which naturally brings the average price down. This also explains something else you might have heard about called the K-shaped economy. And what that means is the upper arm of the K, which is driven by your high income earners and your luxury buyers, have a lot of spending power. Whereas your lower middle class households, which are your first time home buyers, they pull back out of the market and it creates a steep divide. We also reported last month in our market video that the K-shaped economy data lags behind by 18 to 24 months. Between 2021 and 2024, we saw a very sharp K-shaped economy. However, the data for 2025 shows this weakening. So this softening is where something important is building beneath the surface. The first-time home buyers didn't just vanish, they paused. And this pause is what is causing shadow demand. These are buyers who want to buy, they can afford to buy, but they've been sitting on the sidelines because the payment hasn't made sense to them yet. This shadow demand isn't just comprised of first-time home buyers, it's also families who have outgrown their current home, but they just can't afford the monthly cost of a larger home. And another segment I see quite often are people who purchased homes in the pandemic frenzy, and they did it in such a rush that that home actually isn't a good fit for them, but they can't afford to make a move just yet. Shadow demand has been growing since late 2022 when interest rates nearly tripled when what felt like overnight. And this caused something called payment shock. So what is payment shock? Well, if we look at a $500,000 home that you could have purchased in 2022 at a 2.65% interest rate, your monthly payment would have been about $2,000 a month. That same home with today's interest rate is $1,000 more per month. But here's something very important to know. These buyers still want to buy a home. They just can't justify the higher payment. And one thing the headlines miss is they still are living life and having babies and getting married or maybe getting divorced, relocating for a job, outgrowing their rental. Maybe they're tired of their roommate or tired of their landlord. Their need to move has continued to grow. Their ability to move has been frozen. That's why mortgage applications spike anytime the Fed cuts rates just slightly. And in September, when the Fed announced their first rate cut, mortgage applications actually increased 30%. That is shadow demand revealing itself. And that is why analysts believe that 2026 will not be a frenzy, but a slow, steady release of buyers who have been sitting on the sidelines for years. With so many buyers sitting on the sidelines for the past couple of years, you might expect prices to just drop drastically, but that's not happened, and there's a good reason for it. That's because sellers are not panicking. Most sellers today have low interest rates, significant equity, and zero desperation. So instead of slashing their prices, many are just pulling their homes off the market. In September, nearly 85,000 homes were delisted nationally. That's up 28% year over year. Locally here in Tampa Bay, there were nearly 1,000 homes taken off the market in October and another 500 in November. As a result, inventory is down locally about 15% from its high back in the spring and summer months. That does three important things. It keeps inventory tight, it keeps prices from dropping, and it keeps Tampa Bay in a seller-leaning market. So again, prices haven't crashed because sellers have options. And with tight inventory, steady prices, and fewer choices, it's no surprise that buyers are asking more questions now more than ever. And in today's market, they're not just asking family and friends or a realtor, they're actually asking AI. A Realtor.com study showed that 82% of Americans looking to purchase a home are using an AI tool to help them with their research. Knowing this, we asked ChatGPT to tell us what are the top questions that buyers are asking right now about the housing market. They're asking questions like, is now a good time to buy or should I wait? How do I know when I'm financially ready to purchase a home? They're also wondering if mortgage rates are going to drop or if prices are going to drop. They're asking, why is housing so expensive in Florida? And they're wondering if buying a home is still the American dream. When I reviewed the answers that these AI tools were giving, they were generic, vague, and frankly unhelpful. So what we're going to do today is we're going to answer these questions with clear and practical information based off of Tampa Bay's market. First-time home buyers have historically been the largest segment of home buyers. This is important because their spending activity triggers purchases and goods in areas like moving services, remodeling, furniture, and appliances. This spending also supports local businesses and fuels the economy. When first-time homebuyers disappear, the GDP actually slows down, and younger generations miss out on one of the most important wealth-building tools. I bought my first home when I was 26 years old. I was recently married and pregnant, so buying a home gave me peace of mind and a sense of stability. Since then, every home I've bought and sold has created a launching pad for that next stage of my life. It's not just sad that so many young professionals are missing out on this opportunity. It also raises the question, where will it leave them financially 10, 15 years down the road? And this is the reason why we want to provide some answers today. We're going to start with the number one question asked, and it kind of rolls into another question. The number one question asked is, should I buy a home now or should I wait? And we're going to roll it in with, am I financially ready? The answer starts with understanding your monthly payment. And of course, monthly payment is not just the price of the home and the interest rate. It also includes the property insurance, flood insurance if applicable, property taxes, HOA fees, utilities, and maintenance. Most first-time home buyers underestimate these costs dramatically. And let me just give you an example. I'm working with a newly married couple. Now, they're not buying their first home, but they are buying their first home together. So if you ask the question, should I buy now? They're ready to buy now. But then going in and seeing if they're financially ready, we have to take these other expenses into consideration. So we're looking at a $699,000 home. It was well within their budget. But what we found out is that the homeowner's insurance is an additional $7,000 per year. And it requires flood insurance that's also an additional $7,000 a year. We did the property tax calculation, and guess what? There's another $7,000. That's $21,000 per year, or $1,750 more per month on top of their mortgage of principal and interest. So for this particular scenario, they were not financially ready. And frankly, I don't blame them. Financially, it didn't make any sense. However, this does lead us to another important topic called payment shock. Payment shock happens when your future mortgage payment is significantly higher than what you're paying now for the cost of living. So lenders want to make sure that that payment jump isn't a shock to you financially. And I have a perfect example. I was recently working with a young couple who were buying their first home and getting married. They were also living with her parents rent-free. So what we did was I said, okay, if you're buying a $300,000 home, your mortgage payment is going to be roughly $2,400 a month. Go ahead and start putting that in a savings account now, and hopefully do it for several months, 6 months preferred. By that time, the lender sees that you have financial stability and the means to make the payment when you're ready. If you can't save your future mortgage payment for the next few months while still living your life, then you're probably not ready, and this will help you prevent from making a financially bad decision. Now let's talk about down payments. You do not need to put down 20% in order to purchase a home. You can actually put down as low as 3%. And if you've been saving that monthly payment that you're going to need over the last couple of months, it's helped you create that nest egg. But there are some other options for down payment. The best one is if you are currently serving in the military or a veteran, you qualify for a VA loan with 0% down payment. That is great. Thank you for your service. However, there are also down payment assistance programs out there. Most of these are local to a specific region, so I recommend just Google searching or asking your lender about down payment assistance programs near you. And then there is another way to get that down payment, and this is one I've been seeing a lot of lately. It's gifted funds. This is where a relative or family member actually gifts a chunk of money to help you with your down payment. However, don't just go stick that in the bank and call it a day. There are specific requirements that will need to be taken into consideration, so make sure and talk to your lender. Beyond the down payment, you still need more money because you have to pay for the inspection, the appraisal. You'll have to pay your insurance premium up front. Plus, you'll have closing costs, and if you're hiring a mover, that's going to cost you money as well. A healthy buying position means that you have 3 to 6 months of reserves for a rainy day. And once you're financially prepared, then you can start shopping for your future home. However, you're shopping for your future home is not your dream home in your dream location. It's a starter home in a terrific area. What do I mean by that? Well, I live in St. Petersburg, and St. Petersburg is a dream area, but it's also very expensive. So if you're looking to buy your first home, it might be ideal to look outside of St. Petersburg in the Clearwater, Largo, or Seminole area, and here is why. The average sales price in Clearwater in November was $473,000. This is down 30% from the same time last year. Again, this isn't because sellers have slashed prices. This is because there are more options available at lower prices, which helps with affordability. And if you're in Hillsborough County, you can buy a home in the Brandon area for an average of 43% less than in Tampa. So remember, this isn't about buying your forever home. This is about buying a starter home, which brings us to the next question. Is buying a home still the American dream? The answer is yes, but it has evolved. People still want stability, equity, control, a sense of belonging, and long-term financial stability. The path is harder, but it did not die. It just requires a different plan. Gen Z is not walking away from the American dream. They're actually reinventing it. And when you pull all this information together, you can see why 2026 may look different. Prices have softened, but they have not crashed, and inventory is tight, but it is shifting towards affordability. Shadow demand has been building for years, and rates have finally eased. Buyers are adjusting their expectations. They are not giving up, and 2026 won't fix everything, but it may be the year that these sideline buyers re-enter the market. If you want help understanding how all of this information applies to your personal situation, reach out to me and I can help. If you enjoyed this information, please give us a like and subscribe, or share it with a friend who also needs to hear this information. We look forward to seeing you again next month.